Hi, this is Adam Hoffman. This video is for renters, rental providers, and anyone thinking of purchasing their first investment condo or house. Benefit for renters to listen to this video is that you will be able to rent the best place for you. You will not waste your time viewing properties that aren't available for rent or that won't rent to you, and you reduce the chance of other renters getting to rent your unit while you are arranging to view it or get paperwork. And if you have a rental property, it's great to send this video off to your potential renters. It will save you time and money. And if you are thinking of purchasing a property, this is great exposure to the world of landlords. You understand the process of what you are getting into and can take positive action when you do purchase. I'm a former property management business owner and currently a real estate salesperson. I have helped thousands of people find their ideal space, and I hope by watching this video I help you find yours. I think the first thing I want to comment on before getting into all the details of what you should know is general mindset and frame of reference. And that is rental providers, they're human too. And really what they want is to find a renter as fast as possible with as least work as possible, and one that is going to consistently pay rent and not damage their property and be easy to deal with on an ongoing basis and be easy to deal with for the neighbors or other renters or other owners that live nearby. And I think quite reasonably, if you were a renter, you'd probably want the same for anyone that you know. So the idea with this is we want to get everything together for you and help you understand the process so that you can be that ideal renter, and it's great for them and you get to feel good that you're doing a good deed, but most importantly it helps you get the place that you want with the least amount of your time wasted. So before viewing a property or applying a property, I want to make sure that you know the following: that there is going to be extra costs both initially and on an ongoing basis that are greater than the amount of stated rent for any advertising you see, and that you need to have funds available immediately in your bank account to take action on when signing on. These costs are tenant insurance. Close to 100% of rentals in Ontario now require this. The exact cost will vary depending on your particular situation in the unit. As a rough budget and guideline, I'd recommend budgeting $25 to $50 per month. In practice, though, you might end up spending more. Utilities. Unless explicitly written in the advertisement and the lease documents, you should assume that utilities are going to be extra. Now, very often with condos, water and gas is included in rent and electricity is extra. However, there are condominiums where water and gas are extra as well. With houses, it's far more frequent that all or most utilities are extra and not included in rent. In addition to this, what you should know is that if certain utilities are excluded, such as if water and gas is included in rent and electricity is extra, you will still be paying for a portion of the heating system's electricity and air conditioning's electricity, even if it's listed as air conditioning included and heating included. Very similar idea, just as a broad frame of reference, that know that in certain properties your utility payments might be very broad and the amount of accounts you have to set up might be number highly. For example, there could be a water heater rental, there could be water and sewage charges, there could be gas or oil or heat of whatever the source. There's also properties where there is electric heat, so know that even though you're not necessarily hooking up gas, your heat costs might be absorbed within your electricity bill, and if so, you should plan for your electricity bill to be higher. The other thing that you should be aware of with this is that additional deposits might be required when you initially set up your utilities, and this will vary depending on your particular utility provider and which utilities are, and this is also influenced by which building you rent in or which particular geographic area and who the provider is for that area. Window coverings are the next item I want to talk about. For certain locations, window coverings are included. For certain locations, window coverings are not. And this is a surprise to many renters. Very common that in new construction, if you're going to be the first ones moving in, there might not be any window coverings when you move in. Even with pre-existing construction, the window coverings might not be included. The landlord might be taking them for their own use, or the ones that you see in videos or photos or at a viewing might be the current renters, and they might be taking them with them. With this, I recommend budgeting extra money to purchase and install window coverings prior to move-in. You can ask for this to be done for you from the landlord. However, there is no requirement for this, and they may not agree to it. So the idea being, you have to decide if you're willing to rent there with or without this, as the more you ask for, the less likely you are to get the place, and how much you love the place and how any other alternatives might help guide how aggressive you are in asking for extras not included. What I try to do if renting for me is have the landlord have the right to leave all the window coverings that are currently in the unit that aren't owned by the tenants, and it creates a situation where they do not have the obligation to necessarily provide window coverings. So I feel that is a very good compromise that meets the needs of both the renter and the rental provider. Next item I want to talk about is key deposit. So this will vary by the unit. In general, I recommend budgeting in advance $300 for this. In practice, it can be far less or far more. And with this, you might be saying, okay, why this much for a key deposit? And the reason for this is for condos, that might be close to the actual cost to get new keys and to get new electronic access fobs from the property management, especially if you do have a number of them for the unit. And that for houses, especially ones with things like garage door openers, I should also add here, they note that they may not necessarily be included, as well as specialized keys, it can cost a fair bit. The other aspect of this is the cost for standard key, even if it's $5 or $10 or $250, a lot of rental providers are very hesitant to put that very low amount, even if that's necessarily what they're supposed to, and you want to come off as someone that they want to do business with. So I think, one, providing the amount of key and offering the amount of key deposit they're requesting is the way to go for this. And two, what I normally do is proactively offer on your behalf $200 if they haven't specified the amount. The reason for this is you will come off far better to them and be more credible and financially stable if you proactively offer this. It shows you're dealing in good faith, and for such a small amount, relative to the context of renting the property for a year or potentially even more, if it helps you be chosen as the renter they want to do business with, it's probably money well spent. The other aspect of this, on move out, you should be getting all of this amount returned to you, provided you provide back your keys and access cards. The next thing that you should plan for is having, at minimum, in addition to the key deposit and funds for utility hookup and tenant insurance, 2 months of rent when you apply for a property. If accepted, you are going to need to immediately, same day or within 24 hours, get to a bank and send a wire transfer for this. I'll add, it depends on the particular landlord or their representative, the method of payment required for the initial deposit, though many do require wire transfers, some will accept bank drafts. However, this will vary by the particular property. If you do provide payment by bank draft, you will need to absorb the cost of it as well as get the bank draft to their preferred drop-off location. Note that the hours of your bank, as well as the ability to drop it off at specific offices, will vary, and with this it's recommended that you do this in the morning so that you do not run out of time if there are any lines or complications. The other aspect that you know that wire transfers generally will cost you additional money. Bank transfers will, wire transfers even more, and with wire transfers you have to pay the receiving party's wire transfer costs very often in addition to yours. This is often $17.50 per each side of the transaction, so in practice about $35 total. Now this will also vary depending on both the landlord's representative's account and your specific bank account. The 2 months of rent are normally applied to the first month of rent and the last month rent deposit proactively paid. next thing you should budget to have money available for is a full set of checks. And with this, I recommend that you order them immediately in advance, as most banks often take a couple weeks to get them to you. Part of what I do when helping renters offer on a property is proactively offer that you will provide, upon acceptance of the offer, a full set of posted checks, often 10 of them as an example, to prepay rent for the year. This helps you, I should reword, not prepay rent, but have those payments already in, and they will be deposited on the particular month dated for on the check. And what this allows for is a higher rate of acceptance by the landlord for you, because it gives them a little more comfort level, that know that your intention is to stay there for the entire length of the term, as well as that they think they'll have less hassle collecting the rent, and that you're organized and are dealing in good faith, and it's just less administrative work for them. You know, with this, there is a little bit of cost to get a checkbook, and you do have to plan for this in advance. The next item you should be aware of is that most rental providers prefer rental payment by check. And how I proactively structure your offer, again with the idea of I want you to get the place that you want, is to offer that you will provide payment methods monthly through whatever way the landlord prefers. And with this, the idea being that most likely they're going to want to receive a posted check set from you. However, they may also prefer that you provide payment through an online portal, that you provide payment through email transfer, that you provide payment through pre-authorized debit, that you provide payment through credit card, and the idea is that we're looking to accommodate whatever way they prefer. So the next major heading I want to talk to you about now is documents. And prior to doing any in-person viewings, I require, and certainly certain rental providers might as well, that, and if they don't, I should add, you might want to discuss your profile with them so you save your time, as you don't want to waste your time going to viewing properties where the rental provider, for whatever reason, doesn't want to do business with you. Now, with this, I like to create a profile of the renter, and you may want to do so of yourself if you're dealing directly with your rental provider. And the idea with this is profile should include things like your start date, if you have pets, the type of job you have and the income, your credit score, what sort of debt that you have. For the rental application, the one I recommend that you use if you are working with a real estate salesperson is the Ontario Real Estate Association form. I think it is form number 410. And if you're working with the landlord or representative directly, whatever form that they recommend, fill out the information in as much detail as possible. The less that you leave blank, the more likely you are to get accepted. If there is anything that needs further explaining, explain it, whether it is on the form or you write out a separate letter and note and include it as a file attachment when you send things in. So, you know, for example, if there is a year gap between places that you rented because you moved back in with your family, you know, or you moved in with a significant other, write that in. Certainty provides confidence. The next thing that you should note on the form or most rental applications is information on if you have pets or not. Now, there are two schools of thoughts at this, and one is that certain renters think it's best that they do not list any pets at all, and the thought being that certain rental providers might not choose them because they have pets. The problem with doing this is twofold. One is that when screening, they might look you up and see that you have a pet through your social media account, and they might have approved you otherwise, but now do not trust you. The other issue is that if there are valid reasons why you shouldn't have a pet at the rental, you don't want to probably live there. And so, for example, there are a few reasons for this. One is condominium rules and regulations. So condominiums can pass legally enforceable rules that do not allow any animals. They can also limit the number of animals, they can limit the type of animals, and they can limit the weight of animals. The other reason why is if the pet bothers any other people, and this could be for excess noise, it could be for allergies, it could be damages inside the unit, whether that is urine or physically biting or a windowsill or scratching a floor. It could also be damages outside the unit, so pretty common for animals to dig up grounds and eat plants, and especially if you don't clean up your pet waste immediately the way you should. So if you have a pet and you're renting a condo, your best bet is to really disclose the details of the pet, and you should certainly hope that the landlord will only approve you if it's allowed in the condominium. If representing you, will not be checking for this, so you want to do your own due diligence and check the rules and regulations of the condominium to ensure that is correct. Certainly if you need any guidance on this, you can reach out to me, and your best bet is to take a look at the link that I've included in the word below, where you can look up the property management company who is managing any single condominium complex in Ontario, and then from there Google their name to find out email and phone contact information. I recommend you email them asking if there are any rules restricting pets and what they are, and if your pet would be allowed, and for a copy of the rules and regulations. So the next thing I should add is there can be certain exceptions to this. So, if you have a medical support animal, things of that nature, there may be exclusions where you may be allowed to bring them even if the condo rules and regulations don't allow, but you'd have to examine on a case-by-case basis, and you might want to reach out to the condominium management or legal representative if there are any issues. The next item is that you are going to want to get full credit report and full score from Equifax. I've also included a link for your ease of access. Specifically, you want to go with Equifax. The reason being is a large portion of rental providers prefer this and will probably give you preferential treatment if they have multiple people applying and other people don't have this or have this from another provider. The other aspects as well, you want to get not just the score, not just the report, you want to get both the score and the report. The more certainty you can provide, the more likely you are to hear a yes. The next thing you want to provide is employment letters and your last 3 pay stubs. You can contact your HR department for this, and many businesses have access to an online portal allowing for this. The next item you want to provide is your ID. Now, I understand a lot of renters don't want to provide this, and rightfully so. And you may consider not providing this, and just know that in an ideal situation, this wouldn't matter. The world's not an ideal place. If you provide your ID, there is a much greater chance that you establish a human connection with the person screening you, they have more trust and confidence in you, and they're more likely to approve you if you proactively provide it on their first go. If they have to ask for it, they already have some doubt in their mindset, even if they're not necessarily explicitly stating this or aware of this. It's just how people's minds work. So the more you can on your first go, give the best impression possible, the more likely you are to get what you want. And if you don't have any of these types of documents, you should explain in detail in writing, write up a Word file, save the Word file, and include it when sending your documents on why not. So, very simple. If you're new to Canada and you don't have a credit score here, well, write that out. Why'd you come to Canada? What are you doing? Even better, because it can help humanize you and get a yes, even if you don't meet the landlord's strict operating procedure. And if you have access to a credit report from a different country, even better, include that if so. If you don't have a job letter because you are self-employed, well, write that out too. And what other alternatives can you provide to show how you're going to pay rent? So, for example, do you have government assistance? Do you have a stock and bond portfolio that's providing you some income? And can you explain that and quantify it and provide some proof of it, even if possible? The more details you can provide to show who you're going to be renting to, that you can afford the unit and will pay them and are a good credit risk, the higher the chances are that you're going to get approved. Now, if you do have issues with a lot of these items and you still want to rent the property, the best ways to go about this are either proactively offering a significant extra deposit. So, for example, you might proactively offer to pay an entire year's worth of rent in advance, or offer to pay 4 months in advance, for example, instead of the first two. So maybe the first 2 months prepaid and the last 2 months prepaid, or however you want to structure it. Generally, the more of the final months that you prepay, the higher likelihood you're going to hear a yes. You know, the next thing I'm going to talk about is, I'll actually add too, you can get a guarantor. If you don't want to prepay rent, or even supplement to helps, that, you know, if you know someone in Ontario with income or assets that will sign on a lease with you and be liable as you were, get them to fill out the screening documents and and explain the situation. And, you know, the rental provider might be very happy with you all of a sudden, because they know that there's someone backing you that is going to reduce the chances of default. I am now going to give my top 4 helpful tips for renters. And for people with rental properties and looking to buy rental properties, you should know this as well if you don't already. So, tip number 1 is that you should assume that the lease is for a 12-month commitment unless it is explicitly written within the advertisement. Of course, do read the actual lease document that you sign when it does come time for paperwork. Item number 2 is that you will need to provide at minimum 60 to 90 days notice in advance of ending tenancy. And that you should know that you do need to provide a written notice if wanting to end tenancy at the end of your lease term. So what this means is that although your lease end date might say at the 12 months from now, you will be able to, in general, and your rental provider will be expecting you to stay on longer than the term of the lease unless either they or you provide advance written notice to end tenancy. Now, I've included a form that there's a link to in the information below that you should get. It's called an N9 form. Do look through it. You will need to fill this out in advance and sign it and submit it to your rental provider in order to end tenancy. And with this, leases continue on in perpetuity until written notice has been provided. And when you do end, unless the rental provider agrees to it, and so you'd want to sign a separate N11 form, know that you're going to be ending on the last day of the month in general, if you start on the 1st, or the last day of the term of payment. So the idea being that, you know, you can't just in general end on the 14th of the month unless they agree to it. And with this, that's why I'm saying 60 to 90 days, or 60 days minimum notice. It depends on when in the month you're actually filling out and providing the form, so you might be required to provide more than 60 days notice. Now, you also cannot end tenancy before the end of your lease term, and if you try to, you are responsible for rent costs until the end of your lease unless the rental provider is able to mitigate damages or provides you a release at their discretion, which generally you should assume isn't going to happen. So the other aspect of this that you should be aware of is item number 3 I wanted to talk about, and that is landlords can only end tenancy for a very limited amount of reasons in Ontario. And this is in general for things such as if they or a close family member wants to take occupancy of the property, or if you have not paid rent or caused damage or interfered with other people, and they have a valid eviction notice from the landlord and tenant board. The idea with this is you have security of tenancy in general. There's wide-ranging legislation that deals with this, and there's not much that can be changed by willpower unless the two of you, the rental provider and the renter, negotiate this. And if you do negotiate something other than the legislation requires, I recommend using an N11 form. It's also available on the website that's available in the link below, to formalize your agreement so that everything is certain and that there's no misunderstandings. Now, tip number 4 that you should be aware of is that renters in Ontario have far less rights if they live with the landlord or landlord's close relative, if it's accommodation relating to a workplace or school or not-for-profit, or you're receiving certain types of support services, or it's not intended to be your permanent home, and certain other situations. And with this, the ease of the rental provider getting you out, and the forms to use and the particular legal requirements will vary and really needs to be examined on a case-by-case basis. I'll also add for this entire video that it is applicable for Ontario as of only when the date that this was made, and certainly, you know, if you're watching this outside of Ontario or at a later date, know that some of this information might change, and as always, to consult a professional before taking action. If you have any questions or comments or want to request a video topic for the future, reach out, give me a text message or a phone call. My number is 647-822-1620. My name is Adam Hoffman. I look forward to hearing from you and hope to see you again soon.